Okay, so let's talk about the book of Genesis. It's the very first book of the Bible, and yeah, it tells the story at the beginning of, well, everything. But if you look closer, you'll see it has this surprisingly elegant design, a real literary masterpiece. And that's what we're going to dive into.
And really, the whole thing hangs on this one question. How does a story that kicks off with the entire world, all of humanity, suddenly zoom in to focus on just one single family? Seriously, understanding the answer to that question is the absolute key to unlocking the message of the entire book.
So here's our game plan. We're going to break it down into 4 parts. First, we'll see how a good world went so wrong. Then we'll hit this crucial turning point, this hinge of hope. After that, we dive into the story of this seriously flawed family. And finally, we'll trace the mysterious promise of a king. All right, let's jump right into part 1, A Good World Gone Wrong. This covers those first 11 chapters. Think of this as the wide-angle lens, the big picture story of God and the whole world. So the book opens up with God bringing order and just breathtaking beauty out of darkness and chaos. And he says it's good, not once, but 7 times. At the very peak of this creation, he makes humans in his divine image. Now, this is crucial. They're meant to rule the world for him, to be like little mirrors reflecting his goodness out into creation. But instead of trusting God, the humans decide they want to call the shots. They want their own definition of good and evil. They rebel. And that single choice, that one act of defiance, just unleashes this tragic downward spiral. Relationships break, and the world just spins out into violence and death. And boy, does it escalate quickly. Right away in the garden, trust is shattered. Then, with the very first brothers, Cain and Abel, murder enters the world. Things get so corrupt that God has to wash the world clean with a flood, saving only Noah's family. But you know what? Even that doesn't fix the root problem. Humanity's rebellion hits its peak at the Tower of Babel, and God has to scatter them across the face of the earth. Which leaves us with this huge, massive question just hanging in the air. After all of this failure, after humanity is completely scattered and divided, what in the world is God going to do to rescue and redeem his creation? Well, the answer comes in what is basically the hinge of the entire book, chapter 12. This is the moment where the whole story pivots and we get this unexpected, brilliant glimmer of hope. And this is where you see the book's incredible design. The author basically takes the camera from this super wide shot and just zooms all the way in. The story shifts from God and the world in chapters 1 through 11 to God and one family for the rest of the book. And that family starts with this one guy, Abram, who later gets renamed Abraham. I mean, he's a nobody from a city of scattered rebels, and yet he is God's surprising answer to the problem of a world gone completely wrong. God makes this official commitment to Abraham, what the Bible calls a covenant. He promises to bless him, give him a ton of descendants, and a new land. But here's the kicker. God isn't just blessing Abraham for his own sake. The whole point is that through Abraham's family, God's blessing is going to flow back to all the scattered families of the earth. There's this classic scene where God makes it official. He tells this old man who has no kids to look up at the night sky and try to count the stars. That's how big your family will be, God says. And Abraham, against all logic, just trusts him. He believes the promise. And that act of faith becomes the foundation for everything that's about to happen. Which brings us to the whole second half of the book, chapters 12 to 50. So God has this incredible plan and this unbreakable promise, but he's chosen to work it all out through one seriously flawed family. So as you read through all the stories of Abraham, his son Isaac, and his grandson Jacob, you're going to feel this constant tension. On one side, you have just repeated spectacular human failure, and on the other side, you have God's absolutely unwavering faithfulness to his promise. It's this back and forth that drives the whole narrative. And I mean, talk about family failure. Abraham is so afraid for his own life, he passes off his wife as his sister, not once but twice. He and Sarah get impatient and try to force God's promise to happen on their own terms, creating this huge family disaster. And their grandson, Jacob, whose name literally means deceiver, well, he totally lives up to it, cheating his own brother. And yet every single time God remains faithful, he bails them out, he rescues them from their own messes. He just keeps reaffirming his commitment to bless them and the world through them. It's unbelievable.
Okay, this all leads us to the climax of Genesis. The author has been weaving this mysterious thread of hope through the whole story, a promise that started way, way back in the beginning.
Remember way back in Genesis chapter 3, right after the rebellion in the garden? God makes this really cryptic promise to the snake. He says that one day a descendant of the woman, a seed, is going to come. And this descendant will be a kind of wounded victor who will crush evil at its source, but get wounded in the process. What's that all about?
Well, the rest of Genesis is basically tracing this thread of hope. First, it's this general promise of a human victor. Then it gets narrowed down. This victor is going to come from Abraham's family, the very family chosen to bless all the nations. And finally, right at the end, it zooms in on one specific family line.
On his deathbed, old Jacob gives this amazing prophetic blessing over his 12 sons. And when he gets to his fourth son, Judah, he makes this stunning prediction. He says a royal scepter will belong to Judah's line, a future king will come from this tribe, and he will command the obedience of all the nations, finally fulfilling God's promise to restore his blessing to the whole world. And that's where the book of Genesis ends. It leaves us with this completely dysfunctional family living in Egypt, clinging to this mysterious promise of a future king that's still way off in the distance. And it just forces you to ask, is this really God's plan? To rescue the entire world through this family of failures and this far-off hope of a king? The book of Genesis's answer is a resounding yes. And it just invites you to turn the page and see how the story continues.